Hi there, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Clarence, and I head up John Crowder's PR department, where we tirelessly strive to make this ministry a respectable operation. And I'll be filling in for John this week. You know, there is such an intoxication on recognizing our union with God, and it is all sourced in the incarnation of Jesus Christ. We are still scratching our heads over the wonder at God becoming man. We are like dumb creatures fiddling with this mystery. And let me tell you that in all of our attempts to evolve beyond religion, you are never going to evolve past Jesus. The unfathomable, incomprehensible glory of His union with mankind. We can act self-aware and intellectually important enough to grasp at it, but at best all our theological attempts are like dressing up a monkey. The incarnation will always elude us until we learn to just rest in it. So the challenge is not to figure it out as much as diving into the joy of discovering this mystery. If we could just begin to comprehend how effortless this reality is. There was nothing you could do to seal yourself together with God. It all happened thanks to His taking humanity into Himself in the person of Christ. You are closer to God than you could possibly imagine because the source of God's connection to humanity is found in the incarnation of Jesus. It's not found in your faith or some ramshackle list of good works or morality. Faith is just waking up to this union when we hear the good news that it already exists. So I'm not saying we should just be a dumb beast. Our understanding of the incarnation is one of the very things that liberates us from striving attempts to grab hold of a God who has already grabbed hold of us. Our proper understanding sets us free from striving to make it happen. But that doesn't mean you're going to fully comprehend it all because the incarnation is still this beautiful, ineffable mystery. See, while charismatics could use a little more doctrinal clarity on this, it's the theologians who think they have it all analytically figured out that could use a little more mystical ambiguity. See, on the one hand, you have charismatics who are trying to climb into the glory of God that's already here. On the other hand, you have theologians dry as a bone, analytically trying to decipher something that is ultimately just to be drunk down and enjoyed. There is such an ethereal, mind-blowing bliss on diving into Christology, the understanding of who Jesus is in His incarnate person. So, we've been hammering on this topic for, the bulk of this year. And in recent teachings, I mentioned the early church council, the Council of Chalcedon, where the church fathers hammered this out for us. The concept of who Jesus is in His hypostatic union. That means the union between God and man that exists in Christ. Now, of course, they derived this from Scripture and from hundreds of years of interpretation and dialogue and meditation. And in this stuff for us today, it is Christianity 101. You start with who Jesus is, and only then can you begin to understand anything else about the scope of salvation or anything else for that matter. So, just to quickly review, at Chalcedon they clarified that Christ is one person, and He has two natures, one divine and one human. Okay? These two natures are distinct. And they have their own integrity. They are not mixed together like a demigod, okay? Now, I understand this sounds very clinical, mechanical. You're like, where's the whack on that? Sort of overanalyzed definition if you want to think of it that way. But you have to understand, man, there were so many strange heresies and sects that would wreck your buzz and throw salvation back upon yourself if you didn't catch wind of who Jesus really was. And maybe some of you guys have even been a bit confused about some of this stuff and may get a little clarity this week Because even though this is foundational to all of Christianity, I mean, few preachers really talk about it, at least in the charismatic world. They just spend their time spinning out sermons on what HBO specials Christians shouldn't watch, or whether it's a sin to wear yoga pants or something. So just for fun, I want to go through a few isms that were present in the early church. Look at a few early Christological heresies that our fathers showed us to avoid because they either diminished the divinity or they diminished the humanity of Jesus. Obviously, you had the Gnostics. Now, we've all talked about Gnosticism before here, or John has anyways, here on the Jesus trip. The Gnostics who thought the material world was evil, and they couldn't stomach the idea that Jesus had a physical, material world body. They thought he had to be some sort of spirit being, like a ghost or a phantasm, because physical flesh was evil. So this will be our first ism, and this is called Docetism. Docetism is the idea that Jesus was just a specter, a ghost or whatever, but he didn't have a real human body. Now that would suck, okay? No, he fully empathized with our humanity, or your humanity, because he is fully human. He felt our full range of emotions. He experienced cold and hunger. He experienced satisfaction after a good meal. Our good Lord even flatulated occasionally each day. Jesus was not ashamed to condescend and take on your human flesh, nor is he ashamed to call us brothers. Now, back to our isms. Our next one is Apollinarianism. Now, these guys argued that Jesus just assumed a human nature, but not a human soul. Instead, his divine nature took the place of the soul. And this idea diminished the full humanity of Christ. And it was rightly condemned. No, Jesus experienced the full range of human soul, human emotions, human thought life, okay? You have to understand this. He was fully human and fully God. Here's another ism, Nestorianism. Nestorians claim that Jesus had two natures, but that he also had two persons, one human and one divine. And it separated out the person of Christ rather than unifying him. It's the unity here that's important. And this one was named after a bishop named Nestorius, who I should mention didn't actually hold this particular view. It's like if someone labeled a bunch of people as Crowderites, who believe that the grace message means license to sin, something that even Crowder doesn't believe but gets accused of all the time. Anyways, moving on. Another one would be Eutychianism, which is the view that Christ's human nature was absorbed into his divine nature. So it didn't preserve the full integrity of both his humanity and his divinity. I mean, look, it's not necessary to explore in detail every heretical ism that sought to contort the incarnation. I mean, there were numerous others. Monophytism, miaphytism, diaphytism, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's the point that I want to get to. Okay, although it seems like the church fathers may have been trying to mechanically over-explain the mystery of the incarnation, that's not what they were doing at all. They were not so much defining the mystery of the incarnation, which itself cannot be fully articulated or even understood, as much as they were drawing some important parameters to tell us what the incarnation was not. Dr. Albert Crisp from Fuller, he notes that these parameters were left minimalistic because the definition of the incarnation says as little as doctrinally possible about the hypostatic union, while making it clear that certain ways of thinking about the person of Christ are off limits or unorthodox. T.F. Torrance, another theologian, he'd say it this way. He says that these early councils like this one, this was negative theology. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. You see, we can't fully fathom all that God is, but we can theologically say what he is not. Okay, that's what negative theology is, saying what God is not. This is what Torrance says. He says, the place of the mystery of Christ in our understanding can only be stated and guarded in negative terms. The mystery is that in Jesus Christ, true God and true man are united in one person. That is the doctrine of the hypostatic union, okay? But we must mark out on either side of this mystery what it is by saying what it is not. In this way, we allow the mystery to declare itself to us and not keep on declaring itself to us without hindering the depth or breadth of its self-disclosure by positive man-made definitions of what it actually is. See, guys, this is important, okay? I'm sorry if this confuses some of you. Think of my poor brain. I can't fully explain God, but I can tell you what He's not. He's not Oprah. He's not Donald Trump. He's not Jim Jones. This negative, or as it's called, apophatic theology, it sort of frames up some boundaries to protect us from idiotic ideas. But you see, the early fathers left plenty of wiggle room to think of the incarnation in terms of what it actually is in so many creative ways. You can never exhaust the depths of this mystery. As a matter of fact, before the early councils like Nicaea, where they felt a need to draw some definitions and parameters for good reason, well before they ever spoke of the incarnation in these sort of ways, they used to speak of it in these mystical typologies that we find in Scripture. I mean, you got church fathers like Athanasius who use much more colorful biblical imagery to describe Christ, not just these abstract theological metaphysical terms. He said the Son, he points out Hebrews 1:3 that the Son is the radiance of the Father. Think of it that way. The Son is the stream flowing from the Father's fountain of living waters. Jeremiah 2:13. And Jesus is the Word and wisdom of the Father. John 1 and Proverbs 8. You see, the goal is not to overcomplicate or mentally break up the parts of Christ. Theologians have a way of overcomplicating matters by clinically dissecting what is united just in order to put it back together again. In our analysis, let's not put more weight on the contradiction than we do the unity of the parts. The fact that God has united Himself to humanity shatters our notions of separation. Yes, let's distinguish His two unmixed, unconfused natures, God and man, but the overarching emphasis is the fact that they are forever bound together in His hypostasis, in His person. And this is of extreme importance to us because it is the very life of our inclusion in God. Jesus said in John 14:20, I am in the Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Furthermore, Jesus Christ is still a human. Now, you humans need to know this. He didn't just turn into some pastel, pink, smoky Christian bookstore angel on a cloud. He didn't just flutter away into space dust, okay? His humanity that He had was not just a fleshly shell that He rented out and used for a period of time here on planet Earth. He didn't just come to live in the flesh. No, the Word became flesh. God incorporated human nature into His eternal being. In the incarnation, humanity has been permanently incorporated into the Godhead. When He was conceived by the Virgin Mary, God acquired an identity that He would retain for the rest of eternity. His human experience is permanent. He did not discard His humanity or dissolve it back into the Godhead. He will forever exist in heaven as a glorified human being. When He rose, when He ascended, He was not deified. He was not made God. He already was God. No, His physical body was glorified. Okay? And you will be glorified. And positionally, you already are. Look, we will forever be drinking in the beauty of this mystery. And I could spend hours talking about how this truth impacts all of your ordinary, everyday human lives, all of you humans out there, how you physically relate with the earthly realm and earthly realm concepts. that get sideways from Gnostic thinking, anti-material world thinking, how you get all mixed up over things like money and sex and beer. And so for the first time here on the Jesus Trip, I want to let you know about a brand new book John Crowder is writing that is already available for pre-order called Money, Sex, Beer, God, a biblical companion to the happy life. It is all about the joy of the incarnation that liberates us from dualistic thinking that separates out our spirituality from our real world experience. Now this one, a lot of people have been looking forward to this, and it hits every controversial topic that preachers don't want to talk about in one fell swoop. Now, it's still going to be a while before it's out, but I do want you to know that all pre-orders will be signed by John Crowder himself, okay? It will offend the bejesus into you, this particular book, or you will realize the bejesus that's already being inside of you. But look, I don't know if anyone's ever made a case for prosperity and hot sex and craft beer out of Chalcedonian Christology. I mean, this is a one-of-a-kind book. You are going to love it. And I also need to let you know that Amazon.com, God bless them, they arbitrarily shut down our seller account. So if you're looking for any of John Crowder's books, okay, the one and only place you're going to get this book, Money, Sex, Beer, God, as well as our other materials to get them at the lowest price directly from us, is our online store, johncrowder.net. And of course, look, we depend on all of you guys to spread this good news like a virus and share these links. A lot of you guys, you share our videos all the time in this really grassroots way, because our vision is to see people liberated. And it's like Paul said, quoting Isaiah, for all the nations to hear. I mean, imagine if everybody hears this. Imagine if we have one big, happy, peace-loving, gospel-believing planet of the apes that was hammered drunk on the wedding feast of the Lamb. So guys, help us out. Spread these books, spread this good news, but also get your head out of a book and come tangibly feast at that wedding supper with us as we come to regions near you to party in the glory. We have some tours coming up. In just a few weeks, the beginning of September, is our 4-city UK tour with worship diva Godfrey Birtle. It's coming to Belfast, Northern Ireland, Edinburgh, Scotland, Leeds, England, and London, England. I don't think that we ever actually capped off our early bird rate. So if you jump online at thenewmystics.com/UK, you can actually still get in on a cheap fare. And speaking of cheap, the grace we are preaching is not only cheap, it is absolutely free. So come join our mega grace tour on the east coast of North America with John Crowder and worship sensation Tim Wright. It's coming to Toronto, Canada, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Birmingham, Alabama. The grace is free, but plane tickets are not. So you can register for any of these 4 cities online at thenewmystics.com/tour. But get in on them before they fill up. And you know, we have other tours coming to Australia in December and New Zealand. We have a tour coming to South Africa in January. You can find all those at our website. And last but not least, look, we love unpackaging all this juicy goodness of the gospel at our 3-day mystical schools. And we have some more of these exclusive events coming up in a few regions. Okay, so John Crowder is going to be in Louisville, Kentucky in October, and he'll be in Bergen, Norway in January. Okay, those are the only mystical school we have left for this year is in Kentucky, so go get it. And then in February, he's going to be in New York City, and also in February next year, he's going to come to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. First one in Oklahoma. Look, and it's never too early to sign up, lock in a spot for these things. And oh, that wasn't last but least. There is one more thing. Today, August 15th, is the deadline to apply for our Indonesia mission trip coming up in November. but we have sort of unofficially extended the deadline because there is still a bit of space. So if you want to come, I would recommend dropping us an email or getting your deposit in as quick as possible. We would love to have you take this crazy adventure with us, and we are expecting crazy miracles off the chain, drinking in the sweetness of this gospel, okay? God bless you all, creatures great and small. Cheers.